I am Morgan Reynolds, 34, and I built my wedding venue empire in secret. Last month, I discovered $100,000 missing from my savings. When confronted, my sister Alexandra just laughed. "You don't need it anyway. You're single with no prospects." Little did she know, her dream wedding venue? I own it. She had stolen from me to pay me, and now I had to decide what to do about it. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the betrayal. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and like this video if you've ever had family take advantage of your success. Trust me, you'll want to see how this plays out. Growing up with Alexandra, or Alex as everyone called her, was like orbiting a star that burned too bright. 7 years my junior. She entered the world as my parents' miracle baby after they'd been told they couldn't have more children. I was old enough to remember the shift in our household dynamics when she arrived, suddenly. I went from being the center of my parents' world to playing a supporting role in the Alexandra show. Our personalities couldn't have been more different from the start. While I was the responsible, studious child who saved my allowance and planned for the future, Alex approached life with reckless abandon. She was impulsive, charismatic, and somehow always landed on her feet despite making decisions that would have spelled disaster for anyone else. When she maxed out her first credit card at 19, my parents paid it off. When she dropped out of college after 3 semesters, they funded her finding herself trip to Europe. The pattern was established early. Alex created messes, and everyone else cleaned them up. My path took a different direction. After putting myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, I graduated with a business degree and minimal debt. While my classmates headed to corporate America, I had different dreams. I'd always been fascinated by event planning, specifically weddings. There was something magical about creating the perfect day for couples to start their lives together, even if my own love life remained stubbornly stagnant. Starting my business was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I began as a wedding coordinator, working 16-hour days for minimal pay, learning every aspect of the industry. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, saved every penny, and dreamed of more. When an old, neglected property came on the market outside the city, a former estate with beautiful grounds, but a desperate need for renovation, I took the biggest risk of my life. With my savings and a business loan that kept me awake at night, I purchased what would become Willow Creek Estate. The renovation nearly broke me, both financially and emotionally. There were days I survived on ramen noodles and coffee, nights I slept on an air mattress in what would eventually become the bridal suite because I couldn't afford the gas to drive home. But slowly, meticulously, my vision took shape. The weathered mansion transformed into an elegant venue with crystal chandeliers and polished hardwood floors. The overgrown gardens were sculpted into romantic settings for outdoor ceremonies. By the time I hosted my first wedding, Willow Creek Estate looked like it had always been a premier destination. I made a conscious decision early on to keep my business separate from my family life. It wasn't that I was hiding my success. My parents knew I owned some wedding venue, but I deliberately kept the details vague. Part of it was wanting to be recognized for my work rather than getting special treatment from clients who might be friends of my parents. Another part, if I'm being honest, was that I'd spent my whole life in Alexandra's shadow and Willow Creek was mine alone. As the years passed, my business flourished. I expanded, buying 2 more properties and developing them with different aesthetics to attract various clients. I hired an excellent team, including my right-hand woman Heather, who managed Willow Creek's day-to-day operations. My little wedding business, as my mother dismissively called it, had grown into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, though my family remained blissfully unaware of its scale. Meanwhile, Alexandra continued her pattern of charmed chaos. She flitted between jobs and relationships, always landing on her feet with my parents' support. When she needed a car, I gave her my old one. When she was between apartments, I paid her security deposit on a new place. I didn't mind helping. I had the means, and despite our differences, she was my sister. I just wished, sometimes, that she would acknowledge the help rather than accepting it as her due. Then came Ryan Miller. Unlike Alex's previous boyfriends, Ryan had stability. He came from a good family, had a successful career in finance, and seemed genuinely smitten with my sister. When they got engaged after a year of dating, I was genuinely happy for her. Maybe Ryan would be the anchor Alex had always needed, the person who could help her grow up at last. Little did I know that their engagement would set in motion a chain of events that would test the limits of family loyalty and force me to confront truths I'd been avoiding for years. Little did I know that Alexandra's wedding would become the battlefield where decades of family dynamics would finally come to a head. The engagement dinner was held at my parents' house, an elaborate affair with champagne flowing freely and my mother practically floating with excitement. I arrived with an expensive bottle of wine and a genuine smile, determined to be the supportive big sister despite the familiar twinge of being an afterthought in family celebrations. Morgan. Alexandra squealed when I arrived, flashing her considerable diamond ring as she embraced me. Isn't it gorgeous? Ryan designed it himself. It's beautiful, I agreed, hugging her back. I'm so happy for you both. And I was. Despite our complicated relationship, I wanted Alex to find happiness. Ryan seemed like a good man, successful, kind, and apparently able to handle my sister's whirlwind personality. Throughout dinner, I watched them together, noting the way he gently reined in her more outlandish statements and how she actually seemed to listen to him. After dessert, Alexandra commandeered the conversation. So we've already started planning, she announced, pulling out her phone. We want a June wedding, which only gives us 8 months. But I found the most amazing venue. My parents immediately leaned in, oohing and awing as Alex scrolled through photos. When she turned the phone toward me, I nearly choked on my wine. The sweeping staircase, the crystal chandeliers, the distinctive arched windows. She was showing me my own venue, Willow Creek Estate. It's called Willow Creek, she said, oblivious to my reaction. It's supposed to be the best wedding venue in the state. Totally exclusive. There's already a waiting list for next summer, but I called and pulled some strings. I wondered what strings she had pulled, considering Heather managed all bookings and would never have mentioned a connection to me. Then again, Alex had always been persuasive. It's beautiful, I said carefully, maintaining my composure. Have you toured it yet? We're going next week, Ryan answered. It's a significant investment, but Alexandra has her heart set on it. I nodded, mind racing. I could tell them right now. Reveal that the exclusive venue belonged to me. That I could ensure they got the best service and perhaps even a family discount. But something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Wanting Alex to choose my creation on its merits rather than because her sister owned it. Maybe it was curiosity about how she would behave when she didn't know she was dealing with family. I'd love to come along on the tour, I offered. I've heard great things about Willow Creek. Really? Alex looked surprised, as if she couldn't imagine me knowing anything about high-end wedding venues. Sure, I guess. Tuesday at 11. The following Tuesday, I arrived at my own venue through the client entrance. Something I rarely did. I'd warned Heather about the situation, swearing her to secrecy. Just treat us like any other clients, I instructed. I want to see how this plays out. Heather raised an eyebrow but nodded. Your family doesn't know you own Willow Creek. They know I own wedding venues, I clarified. They don't know specifically which ones or how successful they are. My sister has never shown much interest in my business. Alexandra and Ryan arrived 15 minutes late, with my sister making a grand entrance in designer sunglasses and heels too high for the gravel parking area. Heather greeted us professionally, giving no indication she knew me. Welcome to Willow Creek Estate, she said warmly. I'm Heather Wilson, the venue manager. You must be Alexandra and Ryan. And, she looked at me questioningly. This is my sister Morgan. Alexandra said dismissively. She's tagging along. I smiled pleasantly, shaking Heather's hand as if we were strangers. The tour proceeded, with Heather highlighting all the features that made Willow Creek special, features I had painstakingly designed and implemented over the years. I watched Alexandra's face as she took it all in, her eyes gleaming with acquisition. "It's perfect," she declared before we'd even finished the tour. "Absolutely perfect. The owner must be some old money family, right? This place screams old wealth." Heather glanced at me momentarily before responding. "The owner prefers to remain private. But I can assure you they're very involved in ensuring every wedding here is exceptional." "Well, we want to book the second Saturday in June," Alexandra announced. "The Platinum Package." The Platinum Package was our most expensive offering, including everything from custom floral arrangements to top-shelf open bar and gourmet menu options. I saw Ryan's eyebrows rise at her declaration. "Honey, maybe we should discuss the packages first," he suggested gently. "The Platinum is significantly more than we budgeted." Alexandra waved away his concern. "It's my dream wedding, Ryan. We'll figure it out." Over the next few weeks, I accompanied Alexandra to several planning meetings at Willow Creek, watching with growing discomfort as she treated my staff with increasing entitlement. She dismissed the chef's suggestions, spoke over the floral designer, and once snapped her fingers at a server bringing us coffee. During a tasting session, she sent back dishes 3 times with trivial complaints. "The salmon is too pink," she declared about a perfectly cooked fillet. "Alexandra," I said quietly after the chef had left looking dejected, "these people are professionals. They know what they're doing." "I'm paying a fortune for this wedding," she retorted. "I expect perfection." "They're trying to give you perfection," I countered. "But you're making it impossible for them to do their jobs." "Since when are you an expert on fine dining and event planning?" she scoffed. "Just because you run some little wedding business doesn't mean you understand this level of service." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that revealing my ownership now would only make things awkward. Instead, I excused myself to use the restroom and found the chef, Marcus, in the kitchen. "The salmon was perfect," I told him quietly. "Please don't take her criticism personally." He nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Ms. Reynolds." Heather explained the situation. "It must be interesting for you." "That's one word for it," I replied with a wry smile. The situation came to a head during a meeting about table settings. Alexandra had been particularly demanding that day, changing her mind repeatedly about linens and flatware. When Erica, our young events coordinator, gently suggested that the gold-rimmed chargers might overwhelm the delicate centerpieces Alexandra had chosen, my sister exploded. "Are you saying I have bad taste?" she demanded, standing up so suddenly her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Who are you to question my choices? I want to speak to the owner about your attitude." "Alex," I interjected. "She was just making a professional suggestion." "Stay out of this, Morgan," she snapped. "This is my wedding." Turning back to Erica, who looked close to tears, she continued. "I want those gold chargers. And I want them with the crystal glassware, not the ones you showed me. I'm sure your absentee owner would be interested to hear you're arguing with a platinum client." That was enough. I stood up, placing a protective hand on Erica's shoulder. "Alexandra, apologize to Erica right now." "Excuse me?" My sister looked genuinely shocked that anyone would challenge her behavior. "You heard me. Apologize. She's doing her job and doing it well. Your treatment of the staff here has been appalling, and I won't sit by and watch it anymore." Alexandra's face flushed with anger. "Who do you think you are? This is my wedding. And this is my employee you're abusing," I nearly shouted back, before catching myself. "I mean, these are hard-working professionals who deserve respect." An uncomfortable silence fell. I could see confusion flicker across Alexandra's face at my slip, but it was quickly replaced by indignation. "Whatever," she finally said, gathering her purse. "I need to go. Erica, have those gold chargers ready for me to approve next time." She swept out without another word, leaving Ryan to awkwardly apologize before following her. After they left, Erica turned to me with wide eyes. "Thank you for standing up for me, Ms. Reynolds." I sighed, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving me drained. "I'm sorry you had to experience that. And I'm sorry I haven't been more transparent about the situation." Later that evening, I received a text from Ryan. "Alexandra is still upset, but I want to apologize again for today. She's under a lot of pressure with the wedding planning." I appreciated his attempt at peacemaking, but couldn't help feeling that he was enabling her behavior just as my parents always had. What troubled me more was overhearing a phone conversation the following day when Alexandra was speaking to our mother about Willow Creek. "The venue is perfect, but the staff is so difficult," she complained. "Especially the manager, Heather. And apparently the owner is some reclusive weirdo who never shows their face. Probably some trust fund baby who doesn't even care about the business." The casual dismissal of my years of hard work stung more than I cared to admit. But I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first sign something was wrong came when I tried to make a routine transfer between my accounts. An error message flashed on my screen: insufficient funds. Frowning, I logged into my savings account, where I kept a substantial emergency fund separate from my business finances. The balance was nearly $100,000 lower than it should have been. My first thought was identity theft. Heart racing, I called the bank and spent 40 minutes with their fraud department, going through recent transactions. What they told me made no sense. "Ms. Reynolds, we show a withdrawal of $100,000 made in person at our downtown branch 3 days ago," the representative explained. "The individual presented proper identification and knew all your security questions." "That's impossible," I insisted. "I never made that withdrawal." "One moment, please." I could hear typing in the background. "The withdrawal was processed by manager Thomas Wilson. Would you like me to connect you with him?" Thomas confirmed what seemed impossible. Someone claiming to be me had come into the bank, presented my driver's license, known my mother's maiden name and the name of my first pet, and withdrawn $100,000 in a cashier's check. He apologized profusely for any misunderstanding, but insisted all protocols had been followed. "Did you get security footage of this person?" I demanded. "Yes, we can provide that to the police if you want to file a report for identity theft." I hung up, mind racing. Someone had stolen my identity, known all my personal information, and somehow obtained my ID. It had to be a sophisticated operation. Or it had to be someone who knew me intimately. I called my parents' house that evening, trying to keep my voice casual when my mother answered. "Mom, something strange happened with my bank account. Did you or Dad recently need any financial information from me? Or did you give my information to anyone?" A pause. Too long a pause. "Morgan," my mother began, her voice taking on the placating tone she used when Alexandra had done something wrong. "You need to understand that family helps family." My blood ran cold. "What did you do?" Another pause. "Alexandra came to us about her wedding expenses. Willow Creek required a large deposit. And with all the extras she wanted, well, she was in a difficult position. So you gave her access to my bank account." My voice rose in disbelief. "Not exactly," my mother hedged. "She said she'd tried to ask you for help, but you'd been so busy and distant lately. We just gave her your old passport for identification and reminded her of some of your personal information. We thought you two would work it out between yourselves." The betrayal was so enormous I could barely process it. My own parents had facilitated what amounted to theft. And Alexandra. "I need to speak with Alex," I said flatly, hanging up before my mother could respond. I drove to Alexandra's apartment in a haze of shock and rage. When she opened the door, her expression shifted instantly from surprise to defiance. "I guess Mom called you," she said, stepping back to let me in. "Actually, the bank called me," I corrected, walking past her into the expensively furnished apartment. "Would you like to explain why $100,000 disappeared from my savings account?" Alexandra crossed her arms. "I needed it for the wedding. You know how important this is to me. So you committed fraud instead of asking me?" I was working hard to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes. "Please. I tried to talk to you about finances weeks ago, but you were too busy playing tour guide at Willow Creek. Besides, it's not like you need the money." "Not like I need." "Alex, that was my emergency fund." "Emergency fund," she scoffed. "Morgan, you own a business. You live in that sleek downtown condo. You drive a BMW. Meanwhile, I'm trying to create the perfect wedding day, the most important day of my life, by stealing from me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's not stealing when it's family," she insisted, echoing my mother's twisted logic. You don't even have a husband or kids to support. What are you saving for? I needed it more than you do. I stared at my sister. This person I'd grown up with, suddenly seeing her with painful clarity. You need to return the money, Alex. All of it. Now. She laughed, actually laughed in my face. It's already spent. Morgan. Deposits, dresses, flowers. All the things that make a wedding special. Then you need to cancel those things and get refunds, I insisted. Absolutely not. This is my wedding. I won't let you ruin it because you're being stingy. She pulled out her phone. Look, if it makes you feel better, I'll set up a payment plan. I can pay you back after the honeymoon. Ryan got a bonus at work. Does Ryan know you stole from me? A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. He knows I secured the funds for the wedding. The details aren't important. I felt sick. The details are fraud and theft, Alexandra. Those are crimes. Oh, don't be so dramatic, she dismissed. It's not like you'll press charges against your own sister. Her confidence in that statement, her absolute certainty that she could take whatever she wanted from me without consequences, was the final straw. I turned to leave, unable to bear looking at her for another second. Morgan, wait, she called after me, her tone softening slightly. I really do appreciate it, you know. This money means my wedding can be perfect. You'll see, it'll be the event of the year. I paused at the door. You keep talking about a perfect wedding, Alex. Have you given any thought to the marriage that follows? Or the relationship with your sister that you just destroyed? The following day, my parents requested a family dinner to sort things out. I agreed, if only to give them a chance to make this right. But as the conversation unfolded in their dining room, it became clear they had no intention of holding Alexandra accountable. Morgan. Surely you can understand, my father began, Alexandra's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So that justifies theft? I asked incredulously. It wasn't theft, my mother insisted. It was an unauthorized loan, which is the definition of theft, I pointed out. Alexandra sat silently, examining her manicure with exaggerated boredom. The money's spent now. My father continued pragmatically. What would you have her do? Cancel the wedding? Disappoint Ryan and his family? Create a scandal? I would have her face consequences for once in her life. I replied, my voice hard. I would have her understand that actions have repercussions. Morgan, my mother said in the same tone she'd used when I was a child being unreasonable. You've always been so responsible, so self-sufficient. Can you find it in your heart to be generous to your sister at this important time? I looked around the table at these three people who were supposed to be my family. My mother, pleading for me to overlook criminal behavior. My father, practical as always about how to make Alexandra's problems disappear. And my sister, who couldn't even be bothered to fake remorse. I need to go, I said, standing abruptly. I can't do this right now. As I drove home, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from my parents, continuing to advocate for Alexandra. Not one message acknowledged the violation I'd experienced. Not one considered how their younger daughter's actions had hurt their elder daughter. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake thinking about patterns established decades ago that had led us here. Alexandra takes, Morgan gives. Alexandra breaks, Morgan fixes. Alexandra shines, Morgan supports from the shadows. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of resentment that had accumulated over years of this dynamic. The next morning, I called my best friend Rachel, the one person who had stood by me through the early struggling years of building my business. She did what? Rachel exclaimed when I explained the situation. Morgan, that's straight-up theft. You need to file a police report. I know, I admitted. Legally, that's exactly what I should do. But Rachel knew me well enough to hear the hesitation. But she's still my sister, I said quietly. And pressing charges would mean destroying her relationship with Ryan, who seems innocent in all this. It would mean a family schism that might never heal. And not pressing charges means letting her get away with stealing $100,000, Rachel pointed out. It means reinforcing that she can take advantage of you without consequences. She was right, and I knew it. Yet, something held me back from taking immediate legal action. Maybe it was lingering family loyalty, or maybe it was the seed of another idea taking root in my mind. There's something else to consider, I said slowly. She doesn't know I own Willow Creek. Wait, Rachel caught on immediately. She stole your money to pay you? For her wedding at your venue? That's some cosmic justice right there. It would be, if I revealed myself as the owner, I agreed. But I'm thinking there might be a more educational approach than simply calling the police. I'm listening, Rachel said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I need a few days to think it through, I told her. But Alexandra has spent her whole life avoiding consequences. Maybe it's time she experienced some, not to punish her, but to finally help her grow up. As I hung up, I felt a strange calm replacing the hurt and anger that had consumed me. Alexandra had overplayed her hand this time. And in doing so, she'd given me unexpected leverage. The venue owner held considerable power over a wedding's success or failure. And for once in our relationship, I was the one with the power. Now I just needed to decide how to use it. The law offices of Brennan and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. I sat across from Patricia Brennan, a razor-sharp attorney I'd consulted during the purchase of my third venue. Her expression remained neutral as I laid out the situation with Alexandra and the stolen money. So my question is, I concluded, what are my legal options here? Patricia tapped her pen against her legal pad. From a criminal perspective, this is clear-cut theft and identity fraud. Your sister impersonated you with the help of your parents, who provided both documentation and personal information. You could file charges against all three of them. I winced at the thought of my elderly parents facing criminal charges, despite their role in the betrayal. Civilly, Patricia continued, you could sue for the full amount plus damages. Given the evidence, it would be an easy win. But collecting might be difficult if your sister has already spent the money, as she claims. And if I wanted to handle this outside the legal system, I asked carefully. Patricia raised an eyebrow. I can't advise on extralegal approaches, Morgan. I don't mean anything illegal, I clarified. I'm thinking about using my position as the venue owner to create some leverage. Understanding dawned on her face. Well, speaking hypothetically, you have a business contract with your sister for services. If she's violated terms of that contract, say, by providing fraudulent payment, you would be within your rights to terminate the agreement. Canceling her wedding entirely seems extreme, I mused. There might be middle grounds. Patricia suggested. Modifications to the contract based on new information. As long as you're not engaging in blackmail or extortion. You have considerable latitude as a business owner responding to fraud. I nodded, ideas beginning to crystallize. Thank you, Patricia. This has been helpful. One more thing, she added as I stood to leave. Whatever approach you take, document everything. Record conversations if you're in a one-party consent state. Keep all texts and emails. If this does eventually end up in court, you'll want a clear record of your actions. That evening, I met with Heather and my core staff at Willow Creek after hours. They'd been managing Alexandra's increasingly demanding wedding preparations with professional grace, but I could see the strain it was causing. I've called you all here because I owe you an explanation, I began, sitting at the head of our planning table. As you know, the bride for the Miller-Reynolds wedding is my sister. What you don't know is that she stole $100,000 from me to pay for this wedding. Shocked expressions greeted this revelation. Marcus, our chef, was the first to respond. So she stole your money to pay you for her wedding here? That's ironic? Absurd? A cosmic joke? I supplied with a wry smile. Yes to all. But it puts us in a delicate position. Are you going to cancel her wedding? Erica asked, a hint of satisfaction in her voice after weeks of Alexandra's abuse. No, I said firmly. Whatever Alexandra has done. Ryan seems like a decent man who doesn't deserve to have his wedding day destroyed. And many innocent guests would be affected. So what's the plan? Heather asked. Because frankly, Morgan, your sister has been the client from hell. Just yesterday, she made one of our junior planners cry. I sighed. I know, and I'm sorry. I've been thinking about how to handle this in a way that's professional but also instructive. Over the next hour, we developed a detailed plan. Alexandra would get her wedding, but with strategic modifications that would teach her some much-needed lessons about respect, appreciation, and consequences. Everything would remain within the bounds of our contract, but we would no longer be bending over backward to accommodate her unreasonable demands. Remember, I emphasized as our meeting concluded, this isn't about revenge. It's about finally holding Alexandra accountable while still delivering a beautiful wedding. Can I count on all of you to maintain absolute professionalism? They nodded. And I felt a surge of gratitude for this team that had helped me build my business and now stood with me through this personal challenge. That night, alone in my condo, I struggled with doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Should I simply confront Alexandra with the truth and demand my money back? Or was this elaborate plan just a way to avoid direct conflict? Something our family had perfected over the years? I found myself revisiting memories of our childhood, Alexandra breaking my science project the night before it was due, my parents minimizing the incident because she's just a child, Morgan. Alexandra borrowing my car in high school and returning it with an empty tank and a dented fender. My father explaining that accidents happen as he handed me the repair bill. A lifetime of small betrayals that had culminated in this grand theft. All enabled by parents who couldn't see the damage they were doing to both their daughters. My phone lit up with a text from Alexandra. Haven't heard from you in days. Are you still coming to the flower arrangement preview tomorrow? Need your opinion on the centerpieces. The audacity was breathtaking. No acknowledgement of the theft, no apology. Just an expectation that life would continue as normal. In that moment, my resolve strengthened. Alexandra needed this wake-up call, not just for my sake, but for her own. The next morning, I called my parents to establish boundaries that should have been set long ago. I want to be clear, I told my mother when she picked up, what Alexandra did was criminal. What you and Dad did to facilitate it was equally wrong. Morgan, we've been through this, she began wearily. No, you've been through making excuses, I interrupted. I'm not calling to rehash that discussion. I'm calling to tell you that until Alexandra returns my money and all three of you acknowledge the gravity of what happened, our relationship will be limited to necessary interactions around the wedding. You would cut off your own family over money. My mother's voice rose in disbelief. This isn't about money, Mom. It's about respect, trust, and accountability, things that have been missing from our family dynamic for far too long. After hanging up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I'd been the family peacekeeper, the responsible one who made accommodations to keep everyone happy. No more. It was time to establish healthy boundaries, even if it caused temporary discomfort. With my plan in place and my boundaries established, I felt my confidence growing. Alexandra had spent a lifetime taking what she wanted without consequence. In a few weeks, that pattern would finally be disrupted, not with drama or vengeance, but with a carefully orchestrated lesson in accountability. As the wedding date approached, Alexandra's demanding behavior escalated to new heights. She called Willow Creek multiple times daily with changes and complaints, often contradicting her own previous instructions. The staff handled each interaction with professional calm, documenting everything as I'd requested. She wants to change the menu again, Marcus reported during our weekly staff meeting. Now she's insisting on Kobe beef instead of the prime rib we already ordered and prepped for. And she wants to add a champagne fountain at the last minute, Heather added. Plus, she called at midnight last night demanding we change the ceremony start time from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. because she read that the lighting would be better for photos. I rubbed my temples. The Kobe beef is impossible at this point. The champagne fountain we can accommodate with an additional fee. The ceremony time, that affects staffing schedules. But we can make it work if absolutely necessary. Should we be accommodating these changes? Erica asked hesitantly. Given the circumstances? It was a fair question. Part of me wanted to deny every capricious demand Alexandra made, but that wasn't the point of my plan. We'll handle reasonable requests professionally, I decided. Anything that's impossible or would compromise the quality of other guests' experience, we decline. Everything gets documented. And all substantial changes incur the standard fees as outlined in our contract. Which she'll be furious about, Heather noted. Yes, I agreed. But that's part of the lesson. Actions have financial consequences. Later that week, I accompanied Alexandra to her final menu tasting, where Marcus presented alternatives to the now impossible Kobe beef request. This Wagyu is actually superior for a wedding setting, he explained patiently. It holds temperature better during service, ensuring your guests receive perfectly cooked beef rather than something that might continue cooking and become overdone. Alexandra poked at the sample with her fork. It's not what I asked for. The Kobe would make a statement. The statement being that you don't understand food service, I muttered under my breath. What was that? She snapped. I said the Wagyu makes a better impression, I covered smoothly. It's about the experience, not just the name. She reluctantly agreed to the Wagyu, but insisted on adding an elaborate seafood station that hadn't been budgeted for. When Heather presented the additional cost, Alexandra balked. That's highway robbery. I'm already paying a fortune for this wedding. You're paying the contracted amount, Heather corrected professionally. Any additions or changes naturally incur additional costs. It's all outlined in your agreement. Well, I'm not paying it, Alexandra declared. Just add it to the bill and send it to Morgan. She's good for it. Heather glanced at me, barely concealing her disbelief at my sister's audacity. Alexandra, I said evenly, I'm not covering additional wedding costs. Don't be ridiculous, she dismissed. You always help out. Besides, you owe me after being so difficult about that money I borrowed. Stole, I corrected. The money you stole. And no, I don't owe you anything. Alexandra rolled her eyes dramatically. Whatever. Look, if you won't help, I'll just have to tell Ryan we need to increase our budget again. This pattern repeated through subsequent planning meetings. Alexandra would make impossible demands, throw tantrums when refused, and then attempt to pass costs on to me or her fiancé. I began to wonder how much Ryan actually knew about the financial arrangements for their wedding. My question was answered when Ryan contacted me directly, asking to meet for coffee without Alexandra. We sat at a quiet corner table in a cafe downtown, Ryan looking uncharacteristically nervous. I appreciate you meeting me, he began. I've been wanting to speak with you one-on-one for a while. Is everything okay with the wedding plans? I asked, curious about his agenda. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. The costs keep escalating, and I'm starting to feel concerned. What did Alexandra tell you about the wedding budget? I asked carefully. Initially, we agreed on something reasonable. But then she fell in love with Willow Creek, which is admittedly spectacular but significantly more expensive than we'd planned. She assured me she had savings to cover the difference. He hesitated. Recently, though, she mentioned borrowing money from you for some of the extras. I took a measured sip of my coffee. Did she tell you how much she borrowed? No specific amount, he admitted. Just that you were helping out as her sister. Is that not accurate? The moment of truth had arrived. I could expose Alexandra's theft right now, potentially saving Ryan from marrying someone capable of such deception. But was that really my decision to make? Ryan, I said carefully. I think you should have a serious conversation with Alexandra about wedding finances. Make sure you have complete transparency before the wedding. He studied my face. There's something you're not telling me. It's not my place to get between you and your fiancé, I replied. But I do believe marriages should be built on honesty, especially about finances. Ryan nodded slowly. I appreciate your discretion. And your advice. He paused. Alexandra can be impulsive sometimes. But she has a good heart. I think marriage will help her mature. I wished I shared his optimism. In my experience, marriage rarely fixed fundamental character issues. But I kept that thought to myself. As we parted, Ryan added, by the way, have you ever met the owner of Willow Creek? Alexandra says they're never around, but I'd like to thank them personally for accommodating all our changes. I'm sure you'll get that opportunity, I said with a small smile. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I overheard a conversation that nearly broke my resolve. I had stopped by Willow Creek to finalize some details when I heard Alexandra's voice from the bridal suite, where she was apparently on a video call with our mother. "It's all working out perfectly," she was saying. "The venue is gorgeous. The flowers are exactly what I wanted, and I managed to add all those extras without paying a cent more." "How did you manage that?" my mother asked. Alexandra laughed. "I just told them to bill Morgan. She's such a pushover. Always has been. Remember when she gave me her college fund because I wrecked Dad's car? Same thing." I froze in the hallway, that particular memory hitting like a physical blow. I had indeed given Alexandra my small college savings after she crashed our father's car at 16, not because I wanted to, but because my parents had insisted it was the right thing to do as a family. I'd worked 2 jobs my first year of college to make up the difference. That money situation worked out too. Alexandra continued. "She made a big fuss at first, but she's calmed down now. Probably realized she doesn't need it anyway. It's not like she has a family to support or anything. Still." "Sweetheart," my mother cautioned, 100,000 is a significant amount." "Please," Alexandra scoffed. "Have you seen her condo? Her car? Trust me, she's loaded. She just likes to play modest. Besides, what's she saving for? She'll probably end up alone with a bunch of cats and all that money just sitting in the bank. At least I'm putting it to good use." I slipped away before I could hear more, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. After all these years, nothing had changed. I was still just a resource to be exploited in their eyes. My success something to be envied and taken advantage of rather than respected. That night, I made final adjustments to my plan. Alexandra would still get her wedding. I wouldn't stoop to ruining an entire event out of spite. But the carefully orchestrated lessons I had planned would proceed with even greater purpose. It was time for Alexandra to finally understand that actions have consequences, and that the people she trampled on her way to getting what she wanted were real people with feelings and dignity. The following evening, the rehearsal dinner unfolded at an upscale restaurant downtown. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, watching Alexandra hold court as the center of attention. When the time came for toasts, she clinked her glass and stood. "I just want to thank everyone for being part of our special weekend," she gushed. "Especially my parents, who have been so supportive, and Ryan's family for welcoming me so warmly." She paused, then added with a laugh, "And I suppose I should thank my big sister Morgan too, for always being there when I need something." The casual reduction of our relationship to what I could provide for her felt like a final confirmation of what I already knew. As glasses raised around the table, I sipped my water and made a silent toast of my own, to new beginnings and long overdue boundaries. After dinner, as guests mingled, Alexandra sidled up to me. "You've been quiet all evening. Still upset about the money thing?" "Actually, I've made peace with it," I replied truthfully. She looked surprised, then pleased. "Good. I knew you'd come around. After all, what are sisters for if not to help each other out?" "Indeed," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "What are sisters for?" As Alexandra moved away to charm another group of guests, Ryan approached me. "Everything okay?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. "You seem distant tonight." "Just tired from all the wedding preparations," I assured him. "Tomorrow will be a day to remember." And that was perhaps the most honest thing I'd said all evening. Dawn broke clear and perfect on Alexandra's wedding day, the kind of pristine June morning that wedding planners dream about. I arrived at Willow Creek at 6 a.m., hours before the bridal party was scheduled to appear. The staff was already in motion, transforming the venue according to our carefully laid plans. "Everything ready?" I asked Heather, who was reviewing checklists in the main office. "Exactly as we discussed," she confirmed. "The standard platinum package with the documented modifications. Nothing more, nothing less." I nodded, a mixture of nervousness and resolve settling in my stomach. "And everyone knows their roles for the day. Everyone's briefed and on board," she assured me. "We're professionals, Morgan. We'll execute this perfectly." By 10 a.m., the venue hummed with activity. Florists arranged stunning centerpieces in the reception hall. Caterers prepared elaborate hors d'oeuvres in the kitchen. The ceremony space on the south lawn was being transformed with an elegant white canopy and rows of wooden chairs. Alexandra arrived at 11, flanked by our mother and her bridesmaids, sweeping into the bridal suite like a queen entering her court. "The mimosas should be ready," she called out as she passed me in the corridor, not even pausing for a greeting. "And make sure they use the French champagne, not that domestic stuff." I exchanged glances with Heather, who raised an eyebrow. We had indeed prepared mimosas, with the premium champagne specified in the contract, not the ultra-premium French brand Alexandra had demanded yesterday without paying the upgrade fee. Throughout the morning, small moments of realization rippled through Alexandra's experience. The special imported orchids she demanded for her bouquet were replaced with equally beautiful but locally sourced peonies. The custom-embroidered robes she'd ordered for her bridesmaids last minute hadn't materialized. The dedicated makeup artist for touch-ups throughout the day wasn't on staff. With each discovery, Alexandra's demands grew more strident, her tone more desperate. "This isn't what I asked for," she confronted Heather when she saw the ceremony chairs. "I specifically said Chiavari chairs. Not these." "Your contract specifies our standard wooden chairs," Heather replied calmly, producing the document with the relevant clause highlighted. Chiavari chairs would have been an upgrade requiring advance notice and additional payment. "Well, change them now," Alexandra demanded. "I'm afraid that's not possible on such short notice," Heather explained. "All our Chiavari inventory is allocated to another wedding across town." Similar scenes played out across the venue as the day progressed. Alexandra would discover that some extravagant last-minute demand hadn't been fulfilled. Staff would calmly reference the contract terms, and my sister would be forced to accept what was actually included in the package she'd paid for. None of the changes affected the fundamental beauty of the wedding. The venue looked stunning. The food was exquisite, the service impeccable. But the event unfolding was the wedding she had contracted for, not the constantly escalating production she had tried to demand without payment. By late afternoon, as the ceremony approached, Alexandra was seething with barely contained frustration. I found her in the bridal suite, already in her gown, furiously texting on her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "No, everything is not okay," she snapped. "This place is a disaster. Nothing is how I asked for it to be. The flowers are wrong, the chairs are wrong. They lost my champagne upgrade request." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "But the venue still looks beautiful. Your guests will be impressed." "It's not about impressing guests," she retorted. "It's about getting what I paid for." The irony of her statement almost made me laugh out loud. Instead, I said, "Well, technically, you paid for exactly what you're getting. It's all in the contract." She narrowed her eyes. "Whose side are you on anyway? You've been weird ever since that stupid money thing." "You mean since you stole $100,000 from me?" I clarified. Alexandra waved dismissively. "You're still hung up on that? Seriously, Morgan, you need to let it go. Today is my wedding day." Before I could respond, our mother bustled in. "Alexandra, darling, you look absolutely radiant. The photographers are ready for the pre-ceremony shots." As they left, Alexandra tossed over her shoulder, "Fix the chair situation, would you, Morgan? You know the venue manager better than I do at this point." The ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful. Alexandra glided down the aisle on our father's arm, looking genuinely radiant in her designer gown. Ryan waited at the altar, his expression a mixture of awe and adoration. For a moment, watching them exchange vows beneath the flower-draped canopy, I felt a pang of something like hope. Maybe marriage would change Alexandra. Maybe Ryan's steadiness would finally help her grow up. Then came the reception, and with it, my moment of truth. The wedding party made their grand entrance into the ballroom to enthusiastic applause. The newlyweds shared their first dance. Cake was cut, and dinner was served, everything proceeding with the polished efficiency that had made Willow Creek famous. As coffee was being poured, the DJ announced it was time for toasts. Ryan's best man went first, sharing heartwarming and humorous stories about the couple. Then Alexandra's maid of honor, a college friend, offered effusive praise about what an amazing, generous person my sister was. Finally, the DJ called my name as the bride's sister. I approached the microphone stand at the center of the dance floor, champagne glass in hand, feeling surprisingly calm. This moment had played out in my mind dozens of times over the past weeks, and now that it had arrived, I knew exactly what needed to be said. For those who don't know me, I'm Morgan Reynolds, Alexandra's older sister. I smiled at the crowd of well-dressed guests. I want to start by saying how beautiful this day has been. Willow Creek Estate is truly a special place to celebrate love and new beginnings. Alexandra beamed from her seat at the head table, clearly pleased with what she assumed would be a standard congratulatory speech. What many of you might not know, I continued, is that Willow Creek holds a special place in my heart too. You see, I don't just admire this venue, I created it. A murmur ran through the crowd. At the head table, Alexandra's smile froze. That's right, I confirmed. I am the owner of Willow Creek Estate. I designed every detail of this place, from the chandeliers above your heads to the gardens outside these windows. I built this business from nothing through years of hard work, determination, and sacrifice. Alexandra was now visibly pale, her eyes wide with shock and dawning horror. I chose not to mention this when Alexandra selected my venue for her wedding, I explained, keeping my tone conversational. I wanted her to love Willow Creek for its own merits, not because her sister owned it. And she did love it, enough to ensure she could afford it by any means necessary. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet. Ryan was glancing between his new wife and me with confusion. Which brings me to an unusual wedding gift, I continued. Alexandra, you transferred $100,000 to Willow Creek for your wedding expenses, money you took from my personal savings account without permission. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Alexandra half rose from her seat, but Ryan gently pulled her back down, his expression darkening. I could have canceled your contract when I discovered the theft, I said, looking directly at my sister. I could have pressed charges. Instead, I chose to give you exactly the wedding you paid for, no more, no less. Every time you demanded extras without payment today, every time you treated my staff disrespectfully, you were stealing from me twice over. I raised my glass. So my gift to you both today is twofold. First, Ryan, I want you to know that your new wife has a $100,000 debt to me that I will expect to be repaid. I turned to Alexandra. And Alexandra, my gift to you is this moment of clarity. Actions have consequences, even yours. I took a sip of champagne. To the bride and groom, may your marriage be built on honesty, respect, and personal accountability, qualities that make not just a good wedding, but a good life. As I returned to my seat, the room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Alexandra was openly crying now, a mixture of rage and humiliation on her face. Ryan looked shell-shocked, his arm mechanically around his new wife's shoulders even as he processed this bombshell. Our mother hurried to the microphone, attempting damage control. Well, family disagreements happen in the best of families, she trilled nervously. Let's get back to celebrating this beautiful couple. The DJ quickly started playing music, and servers appeared with dessert, creating activity to dilute the tension. As guests awkwardly resumed conversations, Ryan approached my table. Is this true? He asked quietly. About the money. I nodded. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, Ryan. I tried to hint that you should discuss finances with Alexandra before the wedding. He closed his eyes briefly. I thought she meant she'd borrowed a few thousand, maybe 5 or 10 at most. Not. God. $100,000. She didn't borrow it, I corrected gently. She took it without permission, using my ID and personal information provided by our parents. He shook his head, looking dazed. I need to think. I need time. As he walked away, I felt a pang of regret. Not for exposing the truth, but for the pain an innocent party was experiencing. Ryan had seemed like a good man caught in Alexandra's web of entitlement and deception. Alexandra didn't approach me for the remainder of the reception. She performed her duties as bride, dancing, smiling for photos, cutting cake, with mechanical precision, her eyes occasionally darting to me with naked hatred. Our parents similarly kept their distance, huddled together and whispering urgently while casting reproachful glances my way. As the evening drew to a close and guests began departing, Heather approached me. "Everything went exactly as planned," she reported. "Professional service, contract fulfilled to the letter." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I know this wasn't easy for any of you." "Actually," she said with a small smile, "there was something satisfying about it. Your sister has been challenging, to put it mildly." Seeing her finally face reality felt like justice. As the last guests departed and the newlyweds prepared to leave for their hotel, the elaborate sparkler send-off Alexandra had demanded without paying for had been replaced with a simple farewell line. My parents finally confronted me in the now empty reception hall. "How could you?" my mother hissed. "You humiliated your sister on her wedding day." "I told the truth," I replied calmly. "The truth Alexandra and both of you have been avoiding for weeks." "We raised you better than this," my father said sternly. "Did you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You raised me to let Alexandra take whatever she wanted from me without consequence. You raised me to believe my feelings and boundaries didn't matter if they inconvenienced your precious younger daughter." "What exactly did you raise me better than?" They had no answer to that. Just hurt expressions and wounded pride. "I need to check on Alexandra," my mother finally said, turning away. "She's devastated." "She stole $100,000, I reminded them. If she's devastated by the truth being told, perhaps she shouldn't have done it in the first place. After they left, I walked through the empty ballroom, taking in the remnants of the celebration, discarded flowers, half-empty champagne glasses, abandoned high heels under tables. Despite everything, I had given Alexandra a beautiful wedding. The venue had been perfect, the food exquisite, the service impeccable. All I had withheld were the extras she had tried to demand without payment and the respect she had never earned. As I turned off the chandeliers and prepared to leave, I felt not triumph or vindication, but a quiet certainty that I had finally broken a toxic pattern. Whether Alexandra learned from this experience was up to her. Whether my parents ever truly understood my perspective was their journey, not mine. For the first time in our relationship, I had held Alexandra accountable. And for the first time in my life, I had prioritized my own worth over keeping the peace. The days following Alexandra's wedding passed in uncomfortable silence. No calls from my sister or parents, no acknowledgement of what had transpired. Only the occasional text from Ryan, asking for time to process everything. A week after the wedding, as I was reviewing finances at my downtown office, my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Ryan Miller. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said as he entered, looking more composed than when I'd last seen him. "Not at all," I assured him, gesturing to a chair. "How are you doing?" He sighed heavily as he sat. "Processing. Reconsidering. Making decisions." "Alexandra?" I asked carefully. "We're staying at a hotel while we figure things out." He met my gaze directly. "I came about the money." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I had no idea," he said emphatically. "You have to believe that. Alexandra told me she had savings for the wedding. When costs increased, she said her parents were helping. The first I heard about money from you was when she mentioned a small loan a few weeks ago." "I believe you," I said simply. And I did. Ryan struck me as honest, perhaps to a fault, the type of straightforward person who wouldn't suspect deception because he didn't practice it himself. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a checkbook. "I want to begin repayment immediately. I can transfer $50,000 today and set up a payment plan for the remainder." I was touched by his integrity but hesitated. "Ryan, this isn't your debt to repay." Alexandra took the money. "She's my wife," he said firmly. "Her debts are my debts now. Besides," he added with a grimace, "I benefited from the theft, however unknowingly. Our wedding was paid for with stolen money. I can't just ignore that." We worked out a repayment schedule that wouldn't cause financial hardship. As he prepared to leave, Ryan paused. "For what it's worth, I think what you did at the reception took courage," he said. Alexandra has been sheltered from consequences her whole life. It wasn't easy to witness, but maybe it was necessary. 3 days later, my parents appeared at my condo unannounced. Their expressions were solemn as I invited them in. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my father began once we were seated in the living room. "And a lot of talking." "About?" I prompted when he didn't continue. "About patterns," my mother said quietly. "About the way we've treated you and Alexandra differently over the years." I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by this acknowledgement. "We never meant to favor her," my father insisted. "We just thought she needed more help. More protection. You were always so capable. So self-sufficient." "Being capable doesn't mean I didn't need support," I pointed out. "Being self-sufficient doesn't mean I wanted to be taken advantage of." "We know that now," my mother admitted. "What Alexandra did with the money, what we helped her do, was wrong. We've spent a lifetime making excuses for her behavior, and in doing so, we failed you both." "How did you fail Alexandra?" I asked, curious about their perspective. "By never teaching her boundaries," my father explained. "By never requiring her to face consequences. We thought we were being loving parents, but we were creating a person who doesn't understand how to function in the real world." It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had as a family. There were tears, painful admissions, and tentative steps toward healing. My parents acknowledged their role in enabling Alexandra's behavior and apologized for dismissing the theft of my money. I acknowledged that my revelation at the wedding could have been handled more privately, though I didn't regret ensuring the truth came to light. "What happens now?" I asked as they prepared to leave. "We're insisting Alexandra get counseling," my mother said. "Ryan is making it a condition of their continuing marriage, and we're supporting that stance. And we'd like to rebuild our relationship with you," my father added. "On healthier terms." "I'd like that too," I admitted, surprising myself with how much I meant it. It was another 2 weeks before I heard directly from Alexandra. The text was brief. "Can we meet?" "Just us." We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. Alexandra arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued, her usual designer outfit replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. "Thank you for coming," she said as she sat across from me. I nodded, waiting to hear what she had to say. "I'm still angry about what you did at my wedding," she began, her voice tight. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I told the truth. I replied evenly. "The truth about what you did to me." She looked away, fingers fidgeting with her napkin. I didn't think of it as stealing at the time. In my head, it was just borrowing. Taking what you could easily spare. "It wasn't yours to take, Alexandra. And it wasn't a small amount, it was $100,000. "I know that now," she admitted reluctantly. "Ryan made that very clear. He's been making a lot of things clear." "How are things with Ryan?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "Complicated. He was ready to annul the marriage when he first found out. We're in counseling now, both couples and individual therapy for me." She met my eyes briefly. "It turns out I have some problematic patterns of behavior to work through." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of hope at her self-awareness. "That's a good first step." "Ryan's paying you back," she said. "But I want you to know I'm contributing to those payments from my own income." "I got a job," she added, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "Nothing glamorous, just admin work at a real estate office, but it's a start." We talked for nearly 2 hours, the conversation shifting between awkward and genuine, defensive and vulnerable. Alexandra was still Alexandra, self-centered in many ways, quick to justify her actions, but I could see small cracks in her facade. Tiny glimpses of a person who might eventually grow into real accountability. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said as we prepared to leave. "I wouldn't, if I were you. But I am sorry, Morgan. Not just for taking the money, but for a lifetime of taking you for granted." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. In the months that followed, I used Ryan's first repayment to establish a scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs, particularly women starting businesses in male-dominated industries. The irony of using money Alexandra had stolen to help others achieve independence wasn't lost on me. My relationship with my family slowly evolved. Weekly dinners with my parents became a tradition, with conversations that delved deeper than surface pleasantries. Alexandra and I maintained a cautious distance at first, gradually building a new kind of relationship based on clearer boundaries and expectations. 6 months after the wedding. At Thanksgiving dinner, I noticed subtle but significant changes. Alexandra offered to help in the kitchen without being asked. My father asked detailed questions about my business expansion plans. My mother didn't once compare us or make excuses for Alexandra's behavior when she mentioned being late on a car payment. As we gathered around the table, I realized the family dynamic had shifted in ways I hadn't thought possible. The patterns established over decades hadn't disappeared entirely, but they had been disrupted enough to allow new, healthier ones to begin forming. The path to forgiveness wasn't simple or straight. There were setbacks, moments when Alexandra slipped into old patterns, times when my parents reflexively took her side. But there was also growth, accountability, and a newfound respect for boundaries that made genuine healing possible. What I learned through this painful experience was that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from consequences. Alexandra had spent a lifetime believing she could take whatever she wanted without repercussion. By finally holding her accountable, I had given her the opportunity to become a better person, an opportunity my parents' well-intentioned enabling had denied her for years. I also learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish or unkind. It makes you a person worthy of respect, starting with self-respect. The $100,000 Alexandra took from me was just money, significant, yes, but replaceable. What I reclaimed by holding her accountable was far more valuable: my dignity, my boundaries, and, ultimately, the possibility of a healthier relationship with my entire family. So, what do you think? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your success or generosity? Would you have handled the situation differently than I did? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story of family drama and hard-earned wisdom. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most difficult boundaries to establish are the ones that ultimately lead to the most healing.